Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to Equipping Leaders, Episode 2. I am your host, Natasha, and today I'm going to discuss emotional intelligence. I think that emotional intelligence is one of the most pervasive and also one of the most misunderstood aspects of the workplace and just life in general. When people demonstrate any type of emotion in the workplace, I hear other people exclaiming, "Look, it's emotional intelligence." And I wish I could say that that was just a dramatic reenactment, but it is not. That is how people perceive emotional intelligence. They just associate it with any type of emotion. Daniel Goleman, the father of emotional intelligence, defines emotional intelligence as the ability to perceive emotions, to access and generate emotions so as to assist thought, to understand emotions and emotional knowledge, and to reflectively regulate emotions so as to promote emotional and intellectual growth. There's a lot in there. So we're going to unpack that, and we're going to do that by looking at the 4 domains and the 12 competencies of emotional intelligence. So with that, I'm only going to highlight these, and I'm not going to dive deep into each one. We will talk about them more like in actual context later, but each one honestly deserves its own entire episode. So we're just going to do a highlighted version today. So the 4 domains are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Under self-awareness, we have emotional self-awareness. Am I even aware of how I am reacting or being perceived emotionally, or even what my emotions are in a variety of situations, even if I do nothing about them? Am I aware that they are there and that they exist? Under self-management, we have emotional self-control, adaptability, achievement orientation, and positive outlook. Under social awareness, we have empathy and organizational awareness. And then finally, under relationship management, we have influence, coach and mentor, conflict management, teamwork, and inspirational leadership. So we can know all of the elements, but does that mean that we can learn to be emotionally intelligent? You can't just read a book about courage and then suddenly be courageous. And the same goes for emotional intelligence. There are some people, though, who do believe that you can gain emotional intelligence if you understand the areas and then you focus in on what you're weakest at. But then there are people on the other end of that spectrum who completely disagree, and they think either you have it or you don't. You can find the areas that you're weakest at a couple of different ways. And so one is by taking a quiz, and there's a really good one that's available through Psychology Today, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes. You can also look at the list and start from where you think your weaknesses are. Now, if you do this method, just remember that we all have biases when we all have blind spots. So it's good to get external feedback on your strengths and weaknesses in those 12 areas. So let's talk about how to be emotionally intelligent in the workplace. And these apply to both leaders and to teammates. There are things that we encounter every day. A look, a person who shifts in their seat, the way an individual responds to you or responds to someone else. And these are all things that we notice and then act upon appropriately when we have emotional intelligence. As leaders, there is a lot of ourselves that we have to give on a daily basis. And I think any leader can relate to that, where you go to work and you're there to give 100%, and people need that from you in a lot of different ways. I know there are some days when I get home and I think, is 6:30 p.m. too early for bed? And no, it's not, by the way. But this is where our self-awareness comes in. We have to give the people around us what they need from us, and we have to set appropriate boundaries that empower ourselves and others, and we need to know what tools we can engage to replenish ourselves. This replenishment is not necessarily a week-long retreat in the mountains of Colorado or a backpacking adventure around Europe. We don't often have time for that. Sometimes all we have is 5 minutes or even 60 seconds, and we have to know what will make us present as our most evolved self. So if you find that you're in a place where you're always exhausted and you feel as though you're giving constantly to those around you, then you probably are. And you owe it to yourself and your teammates to set good boundaries and find tools that you can use to replenish yourself. This is part of emotional intelligence. That's acknowledging your own energy level and what you can give, and then setting boundaries and taking care of yourself as well. So emotional intelligence is not only being aware of the emotions brewing in and around you, it's also how you manage them and engage with them appropriately. It's setting boundaries and respecting the boundaries that are set by yourself and by others. So how do we get better at the skills around emotional intelligence? Earlier, I spoke about the 4 overarching domains of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, and then the 12 corresponding elements. The first step would be to become aware of how you respond in these types of situations. And those types of situations being any work situation or any even home situation that you feel just brings a lot of emotions to the surface. So for example, in self-awareness and the element of emotional self-awareness, maybe you notice that you get too defensive when people offer a critique, no matter what the topic is. Just noticing how you respond is a great start to increasing your emotional intelligence. Once you notice, then you have to do something about it. You can feel an emotion and not react emotionally. It's not about holding your anger or disappointment and just shoving it down and then letting it boil over until you unleash on people and drive yourself into unhealthy habits. It's about acknowledging how you respond, considering the best way to respond, and ensuring that you maintain a professional and approachable environment in the workplace. This also applies at home, so I'm not saying to be emotionally intelligent work and then come home and be an absolute monster. You can use these skills in any environment. So let's talk about what happens when someone does just emotionally unleash on other people in the workplace. It's unprofessional, it's inappropriate, and then we hear people talk about how someone had a, quote, bad day, or they were just upset. No, that is toxic behavior. It is abuse, and no one in any workplace should have to put up with someone else's bad day. Not only does this demonstrate that you cannot control your emotions, but it also negatively impacts your ability to lead. The inconsistency of your behavior makes you untrustworthy. Now, let me also say that getting angry is not negative. You can be angry and you can channel that appropriately to convey it without alienating or belittling those around you. This is another amazing place where emotional intelligence comes in. Specifically, your ability to regulate your emotions and verbalize it in a productive way. So all this to say, emotional intelligence is not being robotic about emotions or holding them in. Have those emotions. It's good for you. It's good for everybody. So just remember that your emotions are yours and you do not need to shove them in someone else's face. Instead, find a way to be productive with them, express them appropriately, and empower others to do the same. So let's talk action steps. What can we start doing right now to increase our emotional intelligence? For the next week, simply notice how you respond verbally, physically, and how you feel in your interactions with other people. Notice the words and body language of those that are around you. This act of noticing, like I stated earlier, will make you more engaged with your environment and the people in it. Nancy Dewar wrote in an article in Choice magazine about emotional intelligence, and she made the point that the inability to have self-awareness impedes the ability to make any behavioral changes that may be necessary to be more productive and successful as a leader. So when you start at this place of self-awareness with your emotions, you are empowered to change your own behavior. As with anything else, emotional intelligence is a journey. Put some effort behind it. Read as much as you can about it and practice it, reflect on it, and you will get better and more impactful over time. Thank you for listening, and please join me next time when I talk about mentorship.